that already? Man, I'm still hungry. Okay, so this is man-made corundum, and you can generally tell that it's corundum because it's split down the middle and you get what's called a half a boule. This is a boule, B-O-U-L-E, the way they create corundum in the flame fusion method. And it generally has internal stress, so generally, but not always, almost always, but not always, they split it. So this is a half boule of corundum. Red corundum, of course, is ruby, and any other color of corundum is sapphire. So in this case, I have a gemology light that I picked up, very useful tool, daylight, incandescent, everything in that gemology light. So if we look at it in one light, it's purple, plum. And if we look at it in another light, it's red, ruby red. So this is color change corundum. Now, for me, for new facetors, sometimes they ask me what they should be buying. And my recommendation is don't buy lots, parcels of gemstones, rough. Buy individual pieces and start out with that. Too many times, you get a new cutter and they're spending all their money on tons and tons of rough that they're never going to get around to cutting. And also too often they're buying CZ, which cubic zirconium, I do buy some and I do cut some, generally for competitions because it's a low price. It's standard, I guess the quality, there's no bubbles in it, it's generally, internally flawless, so it works great for competitions. However, as you know, most everything I cut is either a special order or either way it goes to my wife's store, and I can tell you that I've never had a special order from a customer for CZ. So that's the reason I would not invest in a lot of CZ. So when I was a new cutter decades ago, Jeff Graham was around. Some of you know Jeff Graham, and I bought a lot of rough from Jeff. He's not around anymore, but I showed you in a previous video how to go back to his website where there's a lot of information, free cutting designs, a lot of articles, and you can actually see the rough he had and for sale, and you can see the prices he charged years ago. But I didn't buy a lot of CZ from him when I was new. I was bought this from him. You can tell it's his old website, festers.com. And this is a color change, plum, corundum, man-made, not CZ. So I know there are many other cutters and certainly many rough dealers who disagree with me and want to have new cutters buy a lot of CZ because they can practice with it. Well, practice on amethyst, citrine, topaz, garnet. Some are not that expensive, and you can practice on those and sell them. Or practice on man-made corundum. The man-made beryls, emerald is rather pricey because it's not made in the flame fusion method. It's a little bit more expensive, but there's a lot of man-made gemstones that are in demand. If you can go into the jewelry stores at a lot of the malls, you're going to see man-made sapphire, man-made ruby, man-made emerald. It's available. There are customers who buy it, and I get special orders for it. So I have a special order for a piece of plum sapphire, and the customer is going to get color change, plum sapphire. So now I'm going to cut off a piece with my trim saw so we can put this onto the dop and start cutting it. I just wanted to show you this also, this bowl here, this unique bowl. This is a unsplit bowl of ruby created using the flame fusion method. It's about 800 carats. And before I stumbled onto this whole unsplit bowl, I had always heard that bowls of corundum, ruby or sapphire, created using the flame fusion method were always split in half due to the internal pressures of creating corundum with the flame fusion method. But after buying this bowl and going back to a little more research, I did learn that there are rare cases where whole bowls are created without the internal pressures. And why would that matter? Well, having a whole bowl instead of a half a bowl allows you to cut larger gemstones, as you can look at them and imagine. So anyway, I'll cut this ruby in a future video, but I did want to share what I had learned about split bowls with you. So now back to picking a pear-shaped design to cut my plum-colored sapphire gemstone into. I have cut enough pear-shaped designs and loaded the designs into GemCut Studio or GCS software so that I pretty much have a pretty fair library of pear shapes, and I don't need to go searching the internet for a design this time. I already know that this particular design will work great for sapphires because I've cut it before. The design is called Compear 1 to 1.4, and it was created and released into the web by Robert Strickland. And I can tell from the coding system on the diagram, the PC05.118, that that's a coding system used by facetdiagrams.org. So if you want to look for this design, you can go to facetdiagrams.org and find it there. Now the 1 to 1.40, that's an indication that this particular Compear design was made for a length to width ratio of 1 to 1.4. So in this case, that's what I need. BOPIE wants a 10 by 7 pear. So if you take the length of 10 divided by the width of 7, you get about 1.4. That's the length to width ratio. So this design will work perfectly fine. And just to remind you all, Robert Strickland, who created this design, he also created the predecessor of GemCut Studio. It's called GemCAD. You can find it on the web, and it's no longer being supported or updated, but Robert recently released it into the public domain where anybody who wants it can download the software and use it, as well as a sister program called GemRay. Many cutters do use GemCAD and GemRay, and some use these programs as well as GemCut Studio. Now GCS is supported, is being updated as needed. It's currently probably the main computer-aided software for designing GemCut designs. But GemCAD is available to you if you're interested. Okay, I've gone through a rough preform with 340 grit topper lap on our gemstone. So I've still got a ways to go. It's still wider than I need, so the length width isn't right. When I get the length width right, that'll clean this up. And the one difference you need to note, that when you work on a pear, it depends. You got to check your instructions, because some pears, the center of the pear is the center, but in other pears, and it's very common, the back part of the pear forms kind of a half a circle, and the center where you put your dop is there on the back part. So you can see the dop is not centered on the stone. And in some cases with pears it is, some cases it isn't. You just have to know that. So if you were to have a 10 millimeter piece of rough and you were going to cut a 8 by 10 pear, and you don't take account where your dop goes and you put it in the center, and it's supposed to be back here, when you cut your stone, you're not going to have enough left of the rough. So just make note of that. So in this case, again, it's a half moon, a half a circle is the back part, and that's where you center your stone. So now I'm going to go over this with a 12M lap, tighten everything up, get the length and width just right, and clean this front part up, and then we'll pre-polish and move on from there. Okay, I finished polishing the bottom half of our gemstone, and I used a copper lap with 60,000 grit diamond. So I'll transfer our stone and we'll begin cutting the upper half. Now the thing I would note about this pear shape, and I talked about it earlier and I'll talk about it again, is notice this is the center where your dop is, right? That's the center. But that's not the center of the stone for this design. If you were to center the stone, the center would be somewhere up here, right, with an equal amount to the rear and to the front on your length of your stone. Of course, it's centered on the width. That's the center point of the width, but the length, this is not the center point. And as I transfer the stone, I'll show you some issues and how to resolve them. So now that I'm ready to transfer my gemstone, and here's a photo of what another cutter, a new cutter, posted onto a Facebook group called Faceting Technical. Faceting Technical is one of many Facebook groups that are available for gem cutters, and I'd recommend you go out there and join some of those. So this cutter was struggling with how to transfer a pear-shaped stone. His cone-shaped op didn't work, so he was wondering what to do. And I will tell you that, and I highly recommend you join groups like Faceting Technical on Facebook and ask questions and read the dialogue, and you'll learn a lot. And from what I see, you will get the right answers. I can assure you that there are a lot of talented, experienced gem cutters on Facebook who are happy to give you the right answer. However, just a word of caution, you will probably also get a lot of other answers which are either just guesses, or maybe the well-meaning people who put them out there didn't really understand the issue, but some of the answers you're likely to see are just wrong. So in the case of this person, if you were to go on Facebook and find his posts, a lot of answers, a lot of the correct ones, and some of the wrong ones. I mean, some of the wrong ones include telling the cutter that he cut the stone incorrectly and had to be completely recut. Somebody said, and use less pressure next time. That's not the issue. Someone even suggested the dop he used was maybe bent. No, that's not the issue. And there were other answers which really, I think they just didn't understand the question. So, but again, there were many answers that explained the correct answer. So you do have options to transfer pear-shaped stones. A cone dop won't work if there's a keel on the front part of the pear shape. Not all pear shapes have that. Some pear shapes cut to a center point all the way around, in which case you can use a cone shape. You have to look at your diagram. But in the case where there's a keel, in the case of this stone I'm cutting, and in the case of the stone the fairly new cutter had asked a question about on Facebook, you can use a V-shaped dop, a larger V shape, and use extra adhesive glue, so super glue, or two-part epoxy, or those of you who use wax, use wax. Use the adhesive of your choice, but use a little bit larger of a V-shaped dop so you cover the available space that's touching the dop. Or you could use a V-shaped emerald dop, which are a little bit longer than your average V-shaped dop, but you don't need to buy emerald dops. Or you could cut the crown first, in which case you'd be transferring the stone to a table, and you just need a flat dop to attach to the table. So those options would all work when you're dealing with this type of a pear-shaped design. And let me show you with my gemstone. If you look at our pear-shaped design, center between the width of the stone is right where that where we cut the keel, but the center from the length, the top to the bottom, as I'm showing it here, is about here, right? That's the center. But that's not where our dop is, right? If our dop was in the center, it'd be hard to do a transfer if we had the stone like that, right? So what do you do for this one? Because if you use a cone shape, dop, and you try to transfer, it doesn't quite fit because you have a keel here, and on the other sides around the stone you have it to a center point, but then it's a keel, so the cone shape won't work. So what you use is a V-shape. That's one way to solve this. You can use a V-shape dop, which will work just fine. Or if you have them, and you don't need to have them, but if you had a what's called an emerald dop, because it's used for cutting emeralds, which are long and skinny. That would work just the same as a V-shaped emerald works just fine. So you could use that to transfer. Or another option you have would be, you could have cut the upper part of the stone first, the crown first and the pavilion last. In that case, right now you would have this part looking like this as you cut the crown, and this cutting to a table, a flat table, which we would dop to. So you'd have a table here, put your dop in on a flat dop, and then cut the bottom half. So all three of those would work fine, but a lot of new cutters think that something's wrong because their dop's not right and doesn't transfer to the center, and you have this, what kind of dop to use when you have this kind of cut to a center point 3/4 of the way around and then cut to a keel to the front. So don't get confused over it. If that's the way the design is, it will work fine. You just have to plan for that, for the transfer. Okay, I finished polishing the upper half of our plum colored gemstone color change, and I've set it up in my tabling adapter so that now we can cut and polish the table, and then we'll be finished with this gemstone. Okay, I finished cutting and polishing the gemstone. Now for the table I used, same as for the whole stone, to polish it I used 60,000 grit diamond on a copper lap. Right now copper is my go-to for corundum, sapphires and rubies, so it seems to be worked best for me. But there's many different laps you could use, and many, well, not a whole lot of different oxides or diamond you could use. For corundum, there's no oxide that I know of that works. Cerium oxide doesn't work, aluminum oxide doesn't work, zirconium oxide doesn't work. You've got to use diamond because corundum is so hard. But you can use diamond on, like I do, a copper lap, or you could use it on a bat lap, or you could use it on a tin lap. There's a lot, or the people that are good with ceramic lap, you could do it on a ceramic lap. So there's many different options, but I'm currently using a copper lap for my corundum. So now I'll soak the stone in acetone and get rid of the super glue and remove the stone from the dop. We'll weigh it, measure it, and send it off to BOPIE. So today I cut a color change plum colored piece of man-made sapphire into a pear-shaped gemstone for a customer using, and I used the Robert Strickland's Compear design. Had no issues cutting or polishing this gemstone. Sapphire for me, cuts and polishes pretty much straightforward. I would say that a pear-shaped design is not the first stone I would recommend a new cutter to attempt, because you do have to get the length to width just right, or you end up with your girdle not being uniform. It's going to look like the Rocky Mountains. And because there's a little issue, you just got to kind of think through your transfer. A little bit more complicated than most designs, but a pear-shaped design could very well be one of the first half dozen stones a new cutter cuts, and all cutters should give a pear-shaped design a try. So please let me know in the comments what you think of the gemstone and of this design. And as always, happy fasting, everyone.